Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in our session today. Today in this session we'll be discussing on this project titled C variables, if, else and while. In one of my previous videos I've already given a brief explanation of what variables are. Okay, so let me explain what variables are again here. Alright, so variables are just like something, or let's say a form of, just like a container that you store something inside. Okay, just like if you have a basket, right? You have a basket and you kind of put oranges inside the basket, so that basket is considered a variable, and those oranges inside the basket are considered what? The value of that variable. That's what that variable contains, right? The basket contains what? The oranges, so that variable contains what? Oranges. The basket is considered the variable and the oranges inside are considered the value that that variables hold. Okay, so example, I can say int. This is a normal format for creating a variable in C. Let's say the variable name is j here. Okay, so I can say j equals to 10, because here I've already declared that what? The variable should contain an integer, right? Int here. Data types, I've already explained what data types are in one of the previous videos. You can refer back to them and watch again. So the variable must hold what? An integer, and here is the integer, which is 10 here. I cannot say okay 10.9. this is, I cannot say 10.9. this is a float, right? This is a floating number, and what? From here I've already declared that j should hold what? An integer, while I'm passing a what? A float here. So this is an error. Okay, this will definitely give you an error. So this is just what variables are. There are also conventions that you need to follow when creating a variable. Okay, as far as you go through these materials here, you'll be able to understand the format you are supposed to follow before creating these variables. Okay, so variables are very important. So the next is what? The if statement. Everything, almost everything in programming runs on what? Conditional execution, right? Conditions. If so thing happens, I want so portion of the code to run. Okay, if so did not happen, then so should happen, right? So almost everything in programming is what? About condition. So you just have to know how to use these conditions in C programming. So if, else, while, they are all examples of what? Conditional execution, and we are going to see how we can use them here. Okay, so now before attempting this tutorial here, or before moving ahead watching what I'm going to do in the tasks, make sure you go through all these materials here, because it will make everything very easy for you. If you do not go through them, possibly I might be explaining, I will not be understanding the concept, even though I always try as much as possible to see I explain everything in which I write in my in my terminal. So now moving to the tasks, let's go to the tasks here. So the first task here says what? Says this program will assign a random number to the variable n each time it is executed. Complete the source code in order to print whether the number stored in the variable n is positive or negative. You can find the source code here. So what happens here is that we've been given a code which is here. I'm going to open it now. So we've been given a source code, and what? Whenever you run that source code, it's going to generate a random number and store it inside this variable n. So all we are going to do is to complete the source code in order to print whether the number stored in the variable n is positive or negative. So that's just what we are asked to do. We should be able to tell that, okay, the number that is randomly generated and stored in this variable n is positive or negative. Okay, so this is the code here. Okay, just copy it. All right, just click on this, it will take you to the GitHub repository where you can copy the code. Okay, so come back here, but firstly let me navigate to the directory that I'm supposed to work on. Okay, ALX low level, right? Okay, so I have to create this directory. Okay, so mkdir. Okay, so cd into it. All right, so the next thing is to create your readme. Don't forget, this is a readme. Okay, without the readmes, you all know that the checker will always fail. Okay, so readme is the most. All right, so let me clear. So this is the file in which I'm going to paste that code inside and work on. So I will say vi paste. Okay, so let's copy the code. This is it. So copy. So I'll paste it here. All right, so you can see here there is a comment here that says what your code goes here, right? So it's even showing us where we are going to write our code. So let me just navigate to the place I'm supposed to write the code. So going back to the questions, it says what, like I explained, whenever this code is executed here, this entire code here, whenever it is executed, it is going to what? It is going to generate a random number. As you can see, a random number will be generated, and this random number will be stored inside which variable? Inside this variable n. So our own here is to what? Is to complete the code such that it will print that the number that is stored inside this variable n is positive, or the number that is stored inside it is negative, or the number that is stored inside it is 0. So let's continue reading. They said the output of the program should be the number, then followed by is positive. If the number is greater than 0, it should print what? Is positive. If the number is exactly equals to 0, it should print what? Is 0. If the number is less than 0, it should print what? Is negative. So this is what we are asked to do here, right? So now, to do that, what are we going to do? This is simply a conditional execution, right? So I'll just say if n, they said what? If the number is greater than 0, that is n, right? The value that is stored in n. If n is greater than 0, right? If n is greater than 0, then what? It should print the number, right? The output should be the number, then what is positive. So I will say printf, right? Then this placeholder, because what I'm going to display the number, which is decimal, right? Then is positive. That is what we are asked to display. We should display what? The number, then followed by is positive if the number is greater than 0. So the next thing is what? Is to pass the variable that holds the number. That's all. So the next thing is what? The next condition is what? We should display the number if the number is what? Is exactly equals to 0. So when you use an if statement, you can say else if there are more conditions you want to pass, okay? So else if n is equals to 0, exactly equals to 0, right? I'm talking about this now. Exactly equals to 0, then we should what? We should print f, right? Percentage d, the format specifier, then we say what is 0, right? So let's pass the variable that holds the number. So the next thing is what? I can say else if, right? Else if what? The number is less than 0. So else if n is less than 0, then what? Print f. What are we going to print? The percentage d, the format specifier, and then what is negative. So this is what we are asked to display here, okay? So then the variable n here. So here in this case, if I like, I can simply remove this. I can simply remove this else if here. This one here, the last part. Why? Because I've already what? I've already considered the first condition, which is greater than 0, and I've also what? Considered equals to 0. So definitely here, when you put else, the compiler knows that you are considering what? N less than 0, because I've considered both conditions, right? So the next condition is what? Is less than 0. It is either greater than 0 or equals to 0 or less than 0. So since I've considered the first two conditions, greater than 0, less than equals to 0, so the next one will definitely be what? Will definitely be less than 0. So I can leave it like this, or you can do it the first way I did it. It will still be the same thing. So here I've used printf, and printf is in which header files? The stdio.h. So as you can see, it is not included in this code. So I'll have to come here and include the stdio.h library. As you can see, there is a comment here that says more headers goes here, right? So I can just say hash include, right? stdio.h. So now the next thing is Betty documentation, right? So we have to write our Betty documentation. So this is okay. So main, I can just say main function, right? So the next is what is return, right? I can just say always 0. It's not always 0, okay? This is just for demonstration sake. So I think there is nothing again, so let's save and exit. So let's run Betty and see if Betty documentation is correct. Yes, so you can see Betty documentation is correct. So let's compile the program and see if it will work. So paste here. Yes, so seems like there's no error. So let me run the program first before adding and committing. Okay, so you can see it displays the number. Okay, yes, at the end we have to add a new line. Okay, as you can see here, it's mixing up, right? So we have to add a new line. So I will say vi. Let's see, we have to add a new line here. I can simply come here. I can just say printf, right? Then /n, the new line. Okay, so now let's save and exit. Let's run Betty. All right, Betty is fine. So let's compile again and see. Okay, so now let me run the program. Yes, so you can see now it worked, right? You can see it has generated a random number here. And what this number is definitely positive. As you can see, there is no negative number in front of it, right? So this is showing what? Positive. So let's try run the program and see. You see that it will generate a different number. So you can see it generated a negative number now, right? And it shows what is negative. If you run the program again, it will generate another set of number. You can see it's generating different numbers. Whenever you run them, it's generating, you run the program, it's generate what's a different number. So this is just what the program does. Initially, the program does generate these numbers randomly, but what we did is to what? Show that the number is positive or the number is negative. That's just what we did. So now let's add and commit and see. So task 0, then push. Let's push to GitHub. So let's see if the code works. Yes, so as you can see, we've passed all the checks. Okay, so this is just what we are required to do in this program. Okay, sorry for this task. So now let's move to the next task. The next task here says what? The last digit, that's the name of the task, right? It says this program will assign a random number to the variable n each time it is executed, similar to the problem above, right? Complete the source code in order to print the last digit of the number stored in the variable. Okay, so you can find the source code here. The variable n will store a different value every time you run this program. Yes, so this case here, what we are asked to do is to what? Is to complete the code such that it will be able to print only the last number. Okay, so let me give you an example here. Let me first open my calculator. I want to show you something. All right, here, let's say I have this number here, 785, so this is, let's say the program generated this number, right? All we are required to do in this program, in this task here, is to what? Is to get our program to print this last number here, which is 2 in this case. That's just what we are required to do. If I remove this, if this is the number the code generated, all we are required to do is to print this last number here, which is 3. So how do we do that? Okay, how do we do that? So let me explain. Before I explain, sorry, let's finish reading the program and understand what it's actually required from us. Okay, so it says the variable n will store a different value every time you run this program. Yes, so you don't have to understand all these things. Okay, for now you don't have to understand them, and you can see this warning: please do not touch this code. So don't delete anything. All you are going to do is just to add, but don't delete anything. Okay, so the output of the program should be the string. It should be what? Last digit of what? Of n is the value, that is the last digit, then and is greater than 5. That is if it is greater than 5. If the last digit is 0, it should print is 0. If the last digit is less than 6 and not 0, then it should print and is less than 6 and not 0, followed by a new line. At times the questions are difficult to understand, right? They are kind of tricky, but don't worry, I'm going to explain everything step by step. So now let's open the code first. So before that, let me close this. So now let's open the code here. Before it opens, let me open the file that we are going to work inside. Okay, this is it. So vi sorry, vi, then the file name, right? Okay, so this is the code that we are asked to complete. Copy it here, then paste here. Okay, so this is the code here. So this is the variable, right, that will store the random number that is generated. So what we are supposed to do is to get the last number, the last digit that this variable n holds. So let me open my calculator again. So now, how do you get the last digit of a number? If you have something like, let me delete this, if you have something like 67435, if you have something like this, how do you get the last digit, which is 5? Simply, what you are going to do is to divide it by 10. When you divide it by 10, the remainder will definitely be the last digit. So let me press equal to. Yes, so you can see now it's showing what? 0.5. So this 0.5 is the remainder, right? Or let me say 5. 5 is the remainder, which is also what? The last digit of the number. You can see it from here. It's kind of showing in small font here. 67435. So and now 5 is what is the last digit. So when you are trying to get the last digit of a number, you simply divide it by 10. The remainder will definitely be the last digit of that number. Okay, let me clear this again and show you. So let's say I have 764. I want to get the last digit. The last digit is definitely 4, as you can see from here, right? So I will just say divide by 10. If I say divide by 10, oops, sorry, 564, right? Divide by 10. So you can see the remainder is 4, and 4 is what? Is the last digit. So this is how you can get the last digit of a number. But when you are to do this in C, if at all you read the above resources, we are going to use what? The modulo operator, this percentage sign here. In C, it is used to what? To get the remainder of a number. Let's say I use I say 5 modulo 2. 5 modulo 2 or 5 percentage 2 is the same thing as divide 5 by 2 and display only the remainder. So what will be the remainder? Is 1. 5 divided by 2 is what? Is 2, remainder 1. So the answer of that will be what? Will be 1. If I say 10 modulo 2, it will be what? It will be 0, because when you divide 10 by 2, it's not going to display any remainder. It will divide it without any remainder, so it's 0. If I say 11 modulo 2, it will display what? It will display 1, right? Because 2 will divide 11 5 times and it will remain what? 1. So this is how we are going to use to what? To get the last digit of this number that is stored in this variable n. So let's begin the process. Okay, so what we are going to do here, so the first thing, I'm going to declare another variable. It will be very useful. Okay, int m. So I declared this variable here. So what do I want this variable to do? I can come here, sorry, it should be one spacing. Under this here, I will say, okay, what I want m to do is to store the last value that is what? Inside this variable n. Okay, the last value of the number stored inside this variable n. So I will simply say m equals to n, right? Then the modulo operator, then 10. So what this m will be storing is what? Is the last digit that is stored inside this value n. So with this, we have gotten what? The last digit of the number that is stored inside n. I hope I'm explanative enough, right? So what are we going to do next? So the next thing is to what? Pass in our condition, right? Is to pass in our condition. So I will say if m, because the question here says what? The output should be what? The last range of so. If the last digit of n is greater than 5. So the last digit in this case is stored inside what is m. So I say if m is greater than 5, right? Then what should we print? We should print f, right? Then what? Then this is how it's supposed to look like. The answer should be last digit of, so I will say last digit of, right? Of what? Of n. This n here, right? So I will say last digit of n. So I will use a placeholder, in this case percentage %d, right? Which will store the value of n. So last digit of n is what? Is, then what? The last digit of n is greater than 5. Sorry, the last digit of n followed by the string is, so I will say is percentage %d again, which will store what? The value of m, which is the last digit, right? Then I will say and is greater than 5. I'm considering this first option here, okay, if it is greater than 5. So and is greater than 5. Then come here and what? The first placeholder holds n, right? And the second one holds the remainder m. Okay? So this is it. Like I said, m stores what? The last digit of the number that is placed inside this variable n. And I'm only interested in this last digit. So if the last digit is greater than 5 from here, I'm told to what? To display the answer as last digit of the variable n is what? Is the last digit, which is, in this case, I placed it inside this variable m, and what is greater than 5. So this is what I did here. So the next is what? I can say else if what? If the last digit of n is 0. So here will be what? If m is equals to 0, right? If the last digit is 0, then I should what? Print f, right? Last digit of percentage %d, a placeholder to hold the value of n, right? Is what? Then percentage %d to hold the remainder, right? And what? Is 0. And is 0. This is just what I'm required to display here. So I'll pass in the variables n, then m, right? These are the two variables. That's why I'm using this placeholder here, n and m. Okay, so the next one is what? If the last digit of n is less than 6. So I will say else if the last digit, which is m, right? If the last digit is what? Is less than 6. So less than 6, right? And not 0. Okay, so I will say and m, right? That is, and if m is not equals to 0, right? This is the condition. If the last digit is less than 6 and not 0, that is, if m is less than 6 and also m is not equals to 0, so I should what? Print f, right? Last digit, right? Of percentage %d is percentage %d to hold the value of m, n and m, right? And is less than 6, right? This is what I'm required to add here, right? And is less than 6 and not 0, right? So I'll pass in n and m here, right? Okay, so the next thing is what? The next thing is followed by a new line. So I will say print f, the new line, which is /n here. So this is what we are required here. As you can see also in this case, we've used printf, and it is not, the library that holds printf is not included here, right? So I can come here. So hash include, hash include stdio.h, right? This is the library. So the next thing is what is Betty documentation. So Betty documentation. All right, so main, just say main function, right? Then return always 0, right? So close this. So this is it, right? So the next thing is to what is to save and exit. Sorry, WQ. So now let's run Betty and see if we've done the Betty documentation correctly. Yes, so you can see we don't have any problem with Betty. Betty is fine. So let's compile the program and see. I'm sure some of you here are thinking like this is complex. I assure you, as far as you are going to go through the resources and read extra, this will not be a problem for you. Everything in programming is what is condition. You just have to learn conditional execution at all case. Okay, so let's compile and see. Yes, so our compilation is complete. We don't have any errors. So let's try run the program and see if it will display something similar to what we are given here, right? Yes, so you can see it says last digit of this. You can see the last digit is what is 7. So you can see the last digit of this is what is 7. You can see it has displayed the last digit and is what greater than 5. So let's run the program again and see if it will generate another value. Yes, so you can see it has generated another value again, and you can see the last digit is what is 9, which is truly 9, as you can see from here, right? And what is greater than 5. That's good. That's just what we are required to do. Let's run the program and see. Yes, so you can see here is what the last digit is what is -6, because there is a minus here, right? Is what is -6 and it's less than 6 and not 0. So this is just, I think we've done what we are asked to do in this case. So now let's add, commit and push. Let me just say task 1, then push. It's like this video is taking longer than I expected. I actually didn't want the video to be long, but if at all you are going to explain something like this, it has to be long actually. So let's see if the checker will work. Whoa, so it seems like we have an error. So let's see what the error is. Okay, it says correct output with n equals to 980. So there is something we need to work on. Okay, so let me open the file, which is one something, right? .c. Okay, so let me close this. It says the output is not correct. Wow. So what might be the possible error here? Let's check. Okay, let me open the checker again so that I'll be able to detect the problem here. It says what? Correct output with n is equals to 980. That is, the last digit is 0, right? And 980 is 0. So definitely there has to be a problem with our condition that set m is equals to 0. That is supposed to display m as 0. Okay, so let me see the question again. From here, I would definitely know that the error is from here. It has to be from here because it is the number that ends with 0 that's having the fault, right? So if m is what is 0, the string, so it should display what the last digit of n. If m is equals to 0, this is it. It should print f the last digit of what? Of the number n is, yes, is m, right? And is what? Okay, and it's 0. It's supposed to be 0, the digit 0, not 0 in text. I think that's the problem. Yes, that should be the problem. So let me make it 0 here. Okay, so let's save and exit. So let's compile. All right, so let's try running, even though it was working initially, but let's see again. Yeah, it's still working. So let's add, commit, right? Let me just say task 1, then push. So let's run the check again. I think this time it should work. Let's check. Yes, so you can see we've passed all the checks. Okay, so this next task here says write a program that prints the alphabet in lowercase followed by a new line. So here we are going to write a program. Okay, so we are not going to complete any code. Okay, we are going to write a program. So this is where actually the fun begins. So you can only use putchar function. Every other function, printf, puts, etc. is forbidden. All your code should be in the main function. You can only use putchar twice in your code. I'm sure by now you'll be able to differentiate the differences between putchar and also printf and puts. Okay, when you are using putchar, you are going to what? You are trying to print the characters one by one, right? That's where you use putchar. Okay, if I want to display, let's say I want to write something like this. I want to display something like hello. So when I use putchar, putchar will what? Will display hello, H first, display E, display this L, display the second L, and then display O. This is how putchar works. But if I use printf, it will display all this at a time, right? So when you are using putchar, you are what? You are displaying a character. So just take note of that. Putchar is character and printf is what? String. You can print a whole of string using printf. That is combination of these characters. You can print them using this string. So just know the differences between putchar, printf, and this put, and you'll be able to do all these things. So now let me open the file first here before I begin entering the code. So vi, right? So here we are told to what? To use putchar. So the first thing I have to include the standard library, right, which contains putchar. So stdio.h, it contains putchar, right? So the next thing is what? Betty documentation, right? So we are told that what? That all our code should be in the main function. So I will say main. I will just say main function here, just like I always do. Okay, so here return, right? Return, which is always 0, not always 0 like I keep on saying. So I will say int main, since I'm told to what? To write my code within the main function. So int main void, right? Then okay, so I'm told to use only putchar, right? So how am I going to do this thing? Okay, how am I going to do this? I'm asked to display alphabets in lowercase. So I can say for, right? I can use for loop. This for loop will what? Will iterate over the entire alphabet and it will display all this alphabet for me one by one. So just here I'm going to do this. I can say for I. So the first thing you are going to do is what? Is the initialization, right? For I equals to A. Why am I putting this A within this single quote? Because I'm what? I'm denoting a character. So I have to use that. So this is initialization. I want the iteration to begin from where? From A, right? As you can see here, I put what? A small letter A because I'm told to what? To display them in lowercase. Okay. So what is the condition? What condition does this iteration supposed to meet and terminate the for loop? So the condition should be what? I, if I is less than or equals to what? Or equals to Z. That's the end of the alphabet, right? Alphabet ends in letter Z. So when it encounters this, it should stop. Okay? So and then incrementation, right? I plus plus. So since I'm starting from A, after it prints A, should increment to B, increment to C, up to what? Up to Z, right? So inside this for loop, we are told to what? To print the character. So I can simply say putchar, and we are told to use what? Only putchar. So I can say putchar here, then I. Okay, so if what will happen here is for the first iteration, which is A, it will display the what? The content of this variable I, which is A. Then it will move again and check for the condition. Is it less than or equals to Z? So sorry, it will increment it, right? It will increment it to what? To B. After A is B. Then it will check the condition. Is B less than or equals to Z? Definitely it is. So it will what? Putchar again, and it will print B. So this is how it will keep on going on. It will keep on going until it finds out that this I is what? Is not equals to Z. Okay? It's not less than or equals to Z. Right? So it's going to print A to Z. So the next thing is what they said, you can only use putchar twice in this function. At the end of the what? At the end of the function, you should what? Display a new line. It should follow a new line. So we can only use putchar twice. So this is it. I can just say putchar here to display a new line. Okay. So I can just say /n. So, and that is it. So this is just what you are required to do. So this task here is just testing how you understand the for loops. Okay, for loop are very, very important when it comes to iterating over a set of numbers or variables or alphabet or anything. When you're iterating over a large amount of something, you can use for loop to move around all these things. Okay, the first thing is to what? The iteration, the initialization. Where do you want the loop to start from? In these cases, I'm printing alphabet in lowercase. I want the iteration to start from what? The alphabet A. Okay, so the next thing is the condition that you want to set for the for loop to terminate. Okay, the condition that will stop the loop from going. So the condition in this case is what? Is I less than or equals to Z. So anything that is not less than or equals to Z, it will what? It will terminate the loop and it will move outside the loop. The iteration will be outside the loop. Then the next thing is to what? Is either incrementation or decrementation depending on the purpose of your for loop. So the next thing is what? Is just to print the value of I, which is A, B, C, D, and Z in this case. Okay, so now let's save and exit. Sorry, before that there is a return value. So return, yes, return 0, right? Okay, so now let's save and exit and run Betty and see. Okay, so Betty, okay, oh, Betty is not happy. Okay, I've seen the problem. Here there's supposed to be a space here after the return, right? Okay, so now let's save again and exit. Let's run Betty again. All right, so now Betty is fine. So let's compile the program and see if it will work exactly the way it is required. So paste it here. Wow. Okay, another problem. I used the variable I undeclared. So I have to come here, right? I can say int, oh sorry, in this case I is a character, right? So I will say char, right? I. Okay, so let's save and exit. Hopefully it works this time. So let's run Betty again. Betty is fine with that. Compile again. Okay, so now let's run the program and see if it will work. Yes, so you can see it printed what? A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P up to Z in what? A lowercase, just like the way it is printed here. Okay, so this is how it's supposed to work. Just understand the concept of for loops. When you understand for loops, I assure you'll be able to do all these things yourself. This is a very simple program, something you can do with this is a simple program regarding for loops. There are programs that to find for loops inside for loops inside for loops. It's possible. Okay, so this is just the beginning, but make sure you read more about these loops and understand them. In fact, conditional execution entirely, it's very, very important. So let's add, let's commit. This is task 2, right? Oh, okay, so let's push. Yes, so now let's check our code and see if it will work. Yes, so you can see our checks are correct, right? So this is how to do that. So let's move to the next task. Before that, let me clear my screen here. So the next task here is write a program that prints the alphabet in lowercase and then in uppercase. So it's like we are going to make some amendments to what our previous program here. Okay, you should print it in lowercase and then uppercase followed by a new line. So you can only use putchar function. All your code should be in the main function, and you can only use putchar 3 times. So we are going to use putchar only 3 times in our code. So let's open the file and see how we are going to come about with the solution for this task. So vi okay, so hash include the standard library stdio.h, right? So Betty documentation, right? So main, which is main function, be descriptive enough. Okay, so I'm just doing this for practice sake. Okay, this is for practical sake. Return, so always 0, even though it's not always 0, like I keep on saying. So the main program here, int main, so it's what, void. Okay, so all right, so write a program that print the alphabet in lowercase. So I can say char, right, just like the way I did earlier, char I, then what, then my for loop. So for so for what, for I, that is the what, initialization, right? For I equals to what, a, it should first print a small letter, right, then capital letter, then the condition I, right, less than or equals z, then what again, then I plus plus, increment, right? So now I want to print what, putka I here. Okay, so I'm done with the part that will display what, in lowercase. So the next thing is to move to the part that will display in what, in uppercase. So I can say for, I can use the same I, the one I used above. I is just that the initialization will be different, and also the condition not that different actually. So in this case, since I'm interested in printing in capital letter, so my A here should be in capital letter. That's just the difference. Okay, so I less than or equals to what, Z in capital letter. So that's just the difference. Then what, I plus plus, increment, right? So then what next? Then I will say putka I, right? Okay, then what, we are told to what, to print a new line as well at the end. So I will say putka slash n for the new line. Okay, this will print a new line after all these for loops have been executed. It will print a new line. Okay, so the next thing is what, is return, return, right? Why am I, yes, so it's what, 0. All right, so this is the code. Okay, the first for loop here will display what, putka in lowercase, will display the alphabet in lowercase. The second for loop will display them in what, in uppercase. And this is what we are taught to do here. And the condition here says we can only use putka 3 times. So just count it here. This is 1, 2, and 3. We've used putka only 3 times. So let's save and exit. So let's run Betty on this program and see if Betty is satisfied. Yes, so Betty is fine, right? So let's compile the program here. Okay, so paste. Yes, so there's no any problem. Let's run the program here and see. Yes, so you can see it printed what, A, B, C, D, F, G up to Z in lowercase, right? And then it begins again from A again in capital letter up to what, up to Z. So this is what we are required to do, we are asked to do here. So let's add, so let's commit task 3, right? Then push. I can see someone asked me why I'm using this G for adding, instead of typing git add dot, I'm using G, and instead of git commit I'm using C, and instead of git push I'm using P. In one of the previous video I've explained what aliases are, right? So I kind of set an alias that instead of me to be typing git add dot, I can just simply type G and it will perform the function of git add dot, and then this C will perform the function of git commit, and then this P will perform the function of git push. Okay, just go back to my previous video on aliases and check. I've created an alias for all these things, okay, and it makes things very easy. Instead of typing git add dot git commit every time you are to add and commit, you just simply type in this small set of characters and everything will work. So let's check this program and see if it works. Yes, so you can see we are right. The checker has checked everything and everything is right here. So let's move to the next task here. Let me clear my screen. Let me copy the file name that we are going to work on here. So vi paste. Right. Okay. So this program says what? Write a program that prints the alphabet in what? A lowercase followed by a new line. So we are going to print alphabet in lowercase followed by a new line. Print all letters except Q and E. So we are going to print every single letter from A to Z in lowercase, but we should not print Q and E. Wow, another issue, right? So you can only use putchar function. All your code should be in the main function, and you can only use putchar twice. So I told that we are supposed to use putchar twice in this case. Okay, so first let's begin by including the library. Hash include stdio, right, .h. So the next is what? Betty documentation, right? So main, say main function here. So return, can say always 0, even though it's not always 0, like I keep on saying. All right, so our main function here, int main, right, void. All right, so write a program that prints the alphabet in lowercase followed by a new line. So how do we do this? How do we do this task? So here I can say char. I will declare my I, right? We are going to use a for loop. We are going to iterate over a certain set of characters, right, A to Z. So char I, then I will say for the initialization. Iteration should begin from where? From small a, since I'm printing in small letters, right? Then the condition is what? I less than or equals Z, right? Then what? I plus plus, right? The increment. Okay, so you should what? Putchar what? I. So this loop here is going to print everything from A to Z. So we are asked to print everything except what? Q and E. So how can we do that? Therefore we are going to use an if statement. So I can simply remove this. Inside this for loop I will say if I, right, is equals to Q, right, and what? And I is equals to what? Is equals to E, is equals to E, right? Sorry, if I is not equals to Q, sorry, if it is not equals to Q, and then I is not equals to E, that is when it should what? It should print the alphabet. So I will say putchar I, and I'm done. Okay, so what this is going to do firstly is what? Is check for the initialization, which is A. So I is currently what? Is A. So it will enter the loop. If it entered the loop, then this if statement is inside the loop. So it will check this A that I have stored in I, is it not equals to Q? Is it not equals to E? Yes. So since it is A that is in I, so definitely A is not equals to Q. A is not equals to E. So then it will what? It will print the value of A here. It will print the character A. So it will then increment again and go for what? B. So it will come here and check, is B equals to Q? No. Is B equals to E? No. Then definitely it will print what? B. So if it comes to E here in this case, which is the first that will be encountered before Q, if it comes to E, is E equals to Q? No. Is E equals to E? Yes, definitely this is E. And what I have inside I is also E. So it will not what? It will not print what is inside this condition. Okay, so it will move out because we are told not to print Q and E. Okay, so this is just what the program does. So the next is what? Is the spacing. You say put car, then what? Then /n for the spacing. So the next thing is return 0, right? Okay, so let's save now and exit. So now let's run Betty and see if Betty is fine. Okay, so Betty is fine with this. So let's compile the program. Okay, so compilation is fine as well. So let's run the program and see if we will get the result. Okay, so we are going to print the alphabet from A to Z excluding Q and E. So let's see if E is available here. A, B, C, D, E. So you can see E is not available here, right? So which means E is excluded. So let's go for Q, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, P. Q is supposed to be here, right? In front of P. Sorry, Q is supposed to be in front of P, but you can see it's missing. So our program works, right? So let's add commit. Let me just say task 4, right? Then push. So let's run the checker and see if it will work. Yes, so you can see it worked, right? So let's close and move to the next task here. Before that, let me clear my screen.